Siobhan arrives at her son's charity ball, dressed simply and with pride, her son being one of the country's most prominent entrepreneurs. Ignored and humiliated, she is pushed to the back of the party as if she were an intruder. But when Raphael discovers what happened, the night takes a completely unexpected turn. What he does in front of everyone changes his life, and his mother's, forever. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. Grand Avenue shimmered under the September night sky. Elmwood Manor, a historic mansion restored in the city's financial heart, was illuminated like never before. Golden lights highlighted every detail of its neoclassical architecture, while luxury cars pulled up one after another onto the red carpet stretched to the main entrance. It was the night of the Grand Charity Ball organized by Raphael Thompson Aldridge, heir to the Aldridge technology empire, one of the country's largest software companies. The event promised to raise millions for the expansion of the children's wing at St. Hope's Hospital, a reference in the treatment of children with rare diseases. Far from there, in the South Side neighborhood, on the southern periphery of New York City, Mrs. Yvonne Aldridge was finishing getting ready in her small apartment. At 63, she observed her reflection in the mirror with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. The navy blue dress, bought especially for the occasion, was simple but elegant in its own way. Her gray hair was tied in a discreet bun, and her hands, marked by a lifetime of work, held a small clutch bag. "Do I look all right, Margaret?" she asked her neighbor and friend of decades, who was helping her with the final touches. "You look beautiful, Yvonne. Your son will be proud," Margaret replied, adjusting the modest pearl necklace on her friend's neck. "I still can't believe you're going to this event full of important people." "Neither can I," Yvonne confessed with a nervous smile. But Raphael insisted. He said, "Tonight is too special for me not to be there." The driver sent by Raphael arrived punctually. During the journey through the city divided between luxury and poverty, Yvonne watched the lights of New York City through the car window, pensive. She rarely frequented the city's expanded downtown area, and even less so high society social events. Her life had always been one of hard work, first as a domestic worker, then as a seamstress, while raising her son alone after being abandoned by her husband. Raphael was her only son, and her greatest achievement. From a young age, he showed extraordinary intelligence for technology, earning a full scholarship to a private school and later to State University. At just 35, he transformed a small startup into a technology empire, never forgetting his humble origins. When the car stopped in front of Elmwood Manor, Yvonne felt her heart race. The driver opened the door, and she took her first hesitant steps onto the red carpet. Elegant guests chatted animatedly at the entrance. Women displayed exuberant jewelry, and men in impeccable suits exchanged business cards. Yvonne took a deep breath, trying to contain her insecurity. "I can do this," she murmured to herself. "It's for Raphael." In the grand ballroom, Veronica Brooks Aldridge, Raphael's wife, supervised the final details of the event. At 32, Veronica was what many called the perfect trophy, a former model. With a degree in public relations, daughter of an influential banker, and known for her stunning beauty and her contacts in New York City's high society. Her marriage to Raphael had been celebrated with pomp 3 years earlier, uniting technology and finance, new and old wealth. "Patricia, make sure the photographers from Vanity Fair and Town & Country are positioned at the main entrance," Veronica instructed the event organizer, Patricia Blackwood, known for transforming parties into unforgettable happenings. "And remember, no nobodies in the front row. I want the biggest donors clearly visible." "Of course, Veronica," Patricia assented, making notes on her tablet. Speaking of which, Raphael called. "He'll be a little later. The meeting with the foreign investors is taking longer than expected." Veronica frowned, annoyed. "Just tonight? This event is crucial for our image. He asked us to start without him. He should arrive in an hour at most." At that moment, Yvonne timidly entered the main hall. Her eyes wandered, marveling at the crystal chandeliers, the ice sculptures, and the tables decorated with rare orchids. The orchestra played soft classical music, while waiters circulated, offering French champagne and elaborate canapés. Some guests cast curious glances in her direction, whispering among themselves. Her dress, though the best she owned, clearly stood out from the creations of famous designers worn by the other women present. Veronica, from a distance, noticed her mother-in-law's presence. A cold smile formed on her red-painted lips. "Look who arrived," she commented to Patricia, subtly indicating Yvonne with a nod. Raphael's mother, straight from Southside to Elmwood Manor. Patricia observed the lady with an appraising look. "Is that the mother-in-law you always complain about? I imagined someone more imposing." "Don't be fooled," Veronica replied, taking a sip of champagne. "That simple appearance hides a woman who doesn't accept me as her son's wife, always treating me as if I weren't worthy of her precious Raphael. Seriously? She doesn't seem like the type to cause trouble." "Believe me, she's a master at making subtle comments to belittle me," Veronica insisted. "She once suggested that Raphael should marry their neighbor's daughter, a nice family girl, who would understand true values, as if I were a gold digger." Patricia smiled maliciously. "And wasn't that exactly why you married him?" Veronica shot a sharp look at her friend. "I married for love, obviously. The fact that he's one of the richest young men in the country is just a bonus." Meanwhile, Yvonne remained standing, unsure where to go or who to talk to. A waiter approached, offering a glass of champagne, which she politely declined. "Just a juice, if you have one," she asked in a soft voice. The waiter nodded and walked away, leaving her alone again. That's when Yvonne spotted Veronica across the hall. Her daughter-in-law was watching her, but made no move to greet her or introduce her to the guests. Yvonne took a deep breath and decided to take the initiative, walking towards her son's wife. On the way, an elegant woman blocked her path, looking her up and down. "Excuse me, but this area is for guests only," the woman said disdainfully. "The service entrance is out back." Yvonne felt her face flush. "I am a guest. I am Raphael Aldridge's mother." The woman raised her eyebrows, clearly skeptical. "Really? And where is your invitation?" I don't have one. My son said my name would be on the list." "Of course," the woman replied with a sarcastic smile, "and I'm the Queen of England." Across the hall, Veronica watched the scene with a discreet smile. Patricia followed her gaze. "Your mother-in-law seems to be having trouble," she commented. "What a shame," Veronica replied, making no move to help. Yvonne, embarrassed, was trying to explain her situation when a young waiter of about 25 approached. "Mrs. Aldridge?" he asked gently. "I'm Leo. Your son asked me to look out for your arrival, but I was busy in the kitchen. Please come with me. I have instructions to escort you to your table." The relief on Yvonne's face was visible. "Thank you, my boy." As Leo guided her among the guests, Yvonne felt the glances and whispers around her. At her table, she found a card with her name, but she was alone. All the other chairs were empty. "Don't worry," Leo said, noticing her discomfort. "The other guests will arrive soon. Can I bring you something to drink while you wait?" "A little water, please," she asked, grateful for the young man's kindness. Leo nodded and walked away, leaving Yvonne alone with her thoughts. What she didn't notice was Veronica's calculating gaze, who was already planning how that night would unfold. From afar, Patricia watched the scene with growing interest. "Looks like we have a little family drama tonight," she commented to Veronica. "Perhaps we can make it more interesting." Veronica smiled, her eyes never leaving Yvonne's solitary figure. "I was thinking exactly the same thing." As the hall filled, Yvonne remained alone at her table. The minutes passed slowly and no one came to sit with her. From time to time, a guest would approach, look at the card with her name, make an expression of surprise or displeasure, and then quickly move away to consult the organizer. Leo, the young waiter, watched the situation with growing indignation. Originally from Portland, Maine, he had moved to New York City 3 years ago to study engineering at Hudson University. He worked at events like this to pay for his studies and the rent for a shared room in Greenwich Village, a central neighborhood of the city. "This isn't right," he murmured to his colleague Louisa as he refilled his drink tray in the service area. "The lady is the host's mother, and they're treating her like an intruder." "Welcome to the world of the rich, dear," Louisa replied with a tired sigh. "For them, all that matters is what you have, not who you are." Meanwhile, Patricia Blackwood approached Yvonne with a deliberately cordial smile. "Mrs. Aldridge, isn't it? I'm Patricia Blackwood, the event organizer. It seems there's been a small seating confusion," she said, her melodious voice masking her disdain. "This table was reserved for some of our main donors. Let's find a more suitable place for you. Yvonne, feeling increasingly out of place, nodded timidly. Of course, I don't want to cause trouble. Perhaps I should wait for my son in a more discreet corner. Excellent idea, Patricia agreed, leading her to a table near the kitchen entrance, away from the spotlights and main tables. Raphael should arrive soon. In the meantime, make yourself comfortable. Yvonne's new table had no flower arrangements, name cards, or the refined details of the others. It was clearly an improvised table, placed there for staff or suppliers who needed a break. Across the hall, Veronica chatted animatedly with Julia Wells, a digital influencer with millions of followers, known for her acidic comments on fashion and behavior. That lady in blue, near the kitchen, Veronica commented discreetly. That's my mother-in-law. She just arrived from the periphery and is completely lost in this environment. Julia adjusted her Italian-framed glasses and analyzed Yvonne with a malicious smile. Oh, I love these situations. It's like putting a fish out of water. And she really is your husband's mother. The famous tech genius? In flesh and blood, Veronica confirmed. Raised him alone, working as a domestic worker and then a seamstress. A touching story, isn't it? Absolutely adorable, Julia replied with fake emotion. Perfect material for my next video. When worlds collide, the periphery invades New York City high society. That would be fascinating, Veronica agreed. But Raphael would be furious. He's extremely protective when it comes to his mother. What a shame, Julia lamented, discreetly taking a few photos with her phone. It would definitely go viral. As they talked, a man in his 50s approached. It was Augustus Brooks, Veronica's father and president of one of the country's largest private banks. Daughter, the Thompsons just arrived and are asking for Raphael. What should I tell them? He asked, kissing her cheek. The truth, Daddy, that he's closing an important deal and will arrive soon, Veronica replied, adjusting her father's tie. Oh, and remember to mention the new expansion project for the Middle East. They love hearing about our international plans. Augustus nodded and, before walking away, asked, By any chance, there's that lady near the kitchen who I think she is? Yes, my dear mother-in-law, Veronica confirmed with a tense smile. We should at least offer her more suitable company, Augustus suggested. Out of respect for Raphael. I'm already taking care of it, Daddy, Veronica lied. Don't worry. As soon as Augustus walked away, Veronica exchanged a meaningful glance with Patricia, who immediately understood the message and headed back to Yvonne's table. Mrs. Aldridge, Patricia began with false sweetness, we have a small emergency in the kitchen. Apparently some of the hired waiters couldn't come, and we're short-staffed to serve all the guests. Yvonne looked at her, confused. Oh, what a shame. I hope you can resolve it. Actually, Patricia continued, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret, I thought perhaps you could help us. Me? But how? I noticed you have an elegant and discreet demeanor. It would be perfect if you could assist the kitchen staff, just for a moment until Raphael arrives. It would be a very noble gesture, considering the event is to raise funds for needy children. Yvonne hesitated, a shadow of distrust crossing her face. She wasn't foolish. She perceived the treatment she was receiving. But the mention of needy children touched her heart. If it's to help, I see no problem, she finally replied. I worked as a domestic worker for many years. I know how to serve at table. Excellent, Patricia exclaimed, barely able to hide her satisfaction. This way, please. As she led Yvonne to the kitchen, Patricia cast a victorious glance at Veronica, who discreetly raised her glass in a silent toast. In the frantic kitchen of Elmwood Manor, Yvonne was met with confused looks from the professional team. Chef Anthony Sterling, famous for his explosive temper and award-winning cuisine, interrupted his instructions upon seeing Patricia enter with a guest. What is the meaning of this, Blackwood? He questioned, wiping his hands on his immaculately white apron. You know I don't allow visitors in my kitchen during service. It's not a visit, Anthony, Patricia explained with an affected smile. This is Mrs. Yvonne, who kindly offered to help with tonight's service. The chef looked Yvonne up and down, perplexed. Are you telling me a guest is going to work in the kitchen? Is this some kind of prank for your TV show? Not at all, Patricia assured. Mrs. Yvonne has experience and wants to contribute to the success of the event. Isn't that wonderful? Before the chef could protest again, Patricia quickly said goodbye and left, leaving Yvonne standing uncomfortably between the stainless steel countertops and industrial stoves. "I really don't want to get in the way," Yvonne said timidly. "Perhaps I should go back to the hall." The chef sighed deeply, running a hand through his grey hair. "Look, ma'am, I don't know what game Patricia is playing, but my kitchen is no place for games. I have 200 dishes to send out in the next 45 minutes. Leo, who was in the kitchen refilling his tray, recognized Yvonne and quickly approached. "Chef, this is Mrs. Yvonne Aldridge, mother of the host. Raphael Aldridge," he explained, to the shock of everyone in the kitchen. A heavy silence fell over the room. The chef looked at Yvonne with new eyes, understanding what was happening beginning to form in his mind. "Raphael's mother? And they put her to work in the kitchen?" he asked, incredulous. Yvonne, embarrassed by the situation, tried to downplay what had happened. "It was a misunderstanding. The young lady thought I could help, and I didn't want to cause trouble." "Misunderstanding my foot," the chef exclaimed, furious. "This is the kind of cruelty those harpies love. Patricia Blackwood and her crowd treat people as if they were disposable." Leo gently touched Yvonne's arm. "Mrs. Aldridge, you don't have to do this. I'll take you back to the hall right now." Before they could leave, however, the kitchen door opened again. It was Julia Wells, the influencer, smartphone in hand. "So this is where the real party's happening," she exclaimed, filming the environment. "Hello, Instagram. I'm backstage at the biggest charity event of the year, and you won't believe what I found." Her eyes sparkled as she recognized Yvonne. "And look, the millionaire Raphael Aldridge's own mother, working in the kitchen. That's humility, isn't it, folks? Or could it be something else?" Leo stepped in front of Yvonne, blocking the camera. "This is not appropriate. Please stop filming." Julia laughed, ignoring the request. "Oh, how cute. The little waiter defending the damsel in distress." "This is getting better and better." Chef Anthony approached, his expression intimidating. "Out of my kitchen now." "Relax, chef. I'm just doing my job," Julia protested, continuing to film. "My followers love these raw reality moments." "Out," the chef repeated, this time in a tone that allowed no reply. Julia rolled her eyes but backed away. "All right, I already got what I needed anyway." Before leaving, she looked at Yvonne with false sympathy. "Darling, you're a phenomenon. That little blue clearance dress is going to be the next viral meme, you can bet on it." When the door closed behind her, Yvonne was pale and trembling. A staff member quickly brought a chair for her to sit on. "Don't mind her," Leo consoled. "Julia Wells is known for destroying reputations to gain views." "This is unacceptable," the chef declared, pouring a glass of water for Yvonne. "I'm calling Raphael right now." "No," Yvonne exclaimed, regaining her voice. "Please don't do that. It's his moment, an important event." "I don't want to cause trouble, Mrs. Aldridge," Leo said gently. "You're not causing any trouble. They are the ones treating you with disrespect. My son already has too many worries," she insisted. "When he arrives, we'll talk calmly. Until then, I prefer to stay here if it's not an inconvenience. At least in the kitchen, I feel more comfortable than out there." The chef and Leo exchanged worried glances, but respected her decision. "In that case, welcome to my kitchen, Mrs. Aldridge," the chef finally said, "but as a guest of honor, not as an employee." In the main hall, Veronica received compliments for another impeccable event. Beside her, Patricia seemed extremely pleased with herself. "Where is your mother-in-law?" an innocent guest asked. "I'd like to meet her." "Oh, she's helping in the kitchen," Veronica replied with an enigmatic smile. "You know how these people of simple origin are. They feel more comfortable serving than being served." The restrained laughter around confirmed that her little revenge was being savored by that exclusive social circle. While in the kitchen, Yvonne tried to maintain her dignity, awaiting the arrival of her son, who would completely change the course of that night. LaGuardia Airport buzzed with its usual nocturnal agitation when Aldridge Tech's private jet landed, 40 minutes late. Raphael Thompson Aldridge hurried down the aircraft steps, followed by two foreign executives. At 35, Raphael combined the confident demeanor of a successful CEO with a warm smile that recalled his humble origins. "Gentlemen, the limousines are waiting," informed Paul, his personal assistant. "The documents have already been sent to the lawyers, and the bank transfer will be completed by noon tomorrow." "Excellent," Raphael replied. adjusting his tie. "And what about the ball?" "It started over an hour ago. Your wife has already sent 3 messages asking for you." Raphael checked his phone, frowning at the notifications. "No message from my mother?" "Not that I know of, sir." "Strange," Raphael murmured, quickly typing a message. "She should have arrived a long time ago." As the limousine cut through New York City traffic with the agility allowed by official plates, Raphael tried unsuccessfully to call his mother. "She never answers that phone I gave her," he commented with a mixture of frustration and affection. At Elmwood Manor, the event was at its peak. Celebrities, businessmen, and politicians circulated through the hall, while journalists recorded every moment for the next day's social columns. The charity auction had raised extraordinary amounts, and Veronica, as host, received praise from all sides. "My dear, you exceeded all expectations," commented Claudia Sampson, a traditional New York City socialite. "This event will certainly go down in the history of American philanthropy." "Thank you, Claudia," Veronica replied, radiant. "The credit goes to Raphael, of course. The idea was entirely his. Speaking of him, where is our tech genius? He should arrive any moment," Veronica replied, discreetly checking her watch. "You know how these businessmen are. Always closing some important deal." In the kitchen, Yvonne had found an improbable piece. Chef Anthony, after his initial indignation, discovered in her a pleasant and insightful conversation partner. Sitting in a less busy corner, she watched the team's frenzy with admiration. "I never imagined that preparing food for so many people would be so complicated," she commented to Leo, who kept returning to the kitchen more often than necessary, just to check on her. "It's like a synchronized dance," the young waiter replied, refilling his tray. "Everyone knows exactly their role." "Like in life," Yvonne philosophized. "Everyone has their place, don't they? Maybe mine really is here in the kitchen, and not out there with those people." Leo shook his head, disagreeing. "Don't say that, Mrs. Aldridge. You have as much right to be there as any of them. More even being the host's mother." Yvonne smiled sadly. "My son lives in a very different world from mine now, Leo. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just getting in the way." "Allow me to disagree," Chef Anthony intervened, passing by. "My mother was also a seamstress like you. I grew up watching her work day and night so I could study. Today I have 3 restaurants and 2 Michelin stars, but I never forget where I came from. I'm sure your son thinks the same." Yvonne's eyes welled up. "Thank you for your words, Chef. Raphael was always a good boy. Even with all this success, he still calls me every day, visits me on Sundays for that mac and cheese he loves." Her voice faltered as the kitchen door opened again. This time it was Patricia Blackwood, accompanied by 2 assistants. "Oh, you're still here," the organizer exclaimed, feigning surprise. "I thought you would have returned to the hall." "We're having a very pleasant conversation," the chef replied dryly. "Any problem?" Patricia ignored the hostile tone. "Actually, I came to bring good news. The dinner phase is starting, and I thought Mrs. Aldridge could help us with something very special." "I already said she's not working at my event," the chef began. But Yvonne gently interrupted him. "It's all right, Chef Anthony. What do you need, Mrs. Blackwood?" Patricia smiled triumphantly. "Well, we have a situation in the dishwashing area. Some of the special dessert plates need to be hand-washed, and our staff is overwhelmed. It would be a great help if you could assist for a few minutes." The chef almost choked with indignation. "This is ridiculous! You want Raphael's mother to wash dishes?" "This is deliberate humiliation." "Not at all," Patricia protested with false innocence. "It's just a necessity of the moment. Unless Mrs. Aldridge considers this work beneath her dignity." It was a perfect trap, and Yvonne knew it. If she refused, she would seem arrogant. If she accepted, she would be humiliated. After a moment of silence, she calmly stood up. "I don't consider any honest work undignified," she replied firmly. "Where are the sinks?" "Mrs. Aldridge, you don't have to do this," Leo insisted, furious at the situation. "It's all right, my boy," she replied with a serene smile. "I've washed a lot of dishes in my life, so a few more plates won't make a difference." Patricia led Yvonne to the dishwashing area, a damp and hot space at the back of the kitchen where large stainless steel sinks were piled high with dirty dishes. 2 employees worked frantically to keep up with the demand. "Here are the gloves," Patricia said, handing her a pair of rubber gloves. "We need these French porcelain plates to be washed with great care. They are rare pieces." Yvonne put on the gloves and positioned herself in front of the sink. As soon as Patricia walked away, one of the employees, a middle-aged man named Sebastian, approached. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "I heard the ladies talking." "I know who you are." "It's all right," Yvonne replied, starting to delicately wash a plate. "I'm not ashamed of working." "It's not a matter of shame," Sebastian insisted. "It's a matter of respect. What they're doing is cruel." Meanwhile, in the main hall, Raphael's limousine finally parked at the entrance of Elmwood Manor. Photographers immediately positioned themselves, and flashes illuminated his elegant figure as he stepped out of the vehicle. Veronica, alerted by the movement, hurried to greet him. "My love, finally," she exclaimed, kissing his cheek. "I was getting worried." "Sorry for the delay," Raphael replied, looking around the hall. "Where's my mother?" Veronica hesitated for a second. "Oh, your mother. She was around a little while ago. She must be in the restroom or talking to someone." "Strange," Raphael commented, checking his phone again. "She's not answering my calls." "You know how she is with technology," Veronica said with a slight tone of condescension. "She probably forgot her phone in her purse or let it run out of battery." Raphael nodded distractedly, still looking around. "I need to find her. I brought gifts from the Japanese investors that she'll love." "Darling, we have important guests waiting to speak with you," Veronica reminded, holding his arm. "The mayor is here and the secretary is too. Your mother would understand the priority." Reluctantly, Raphael allowed his wife to lead him among the guests, shaking hands, exchanging hugs, and posing for photographs. However, his eyes continued to scan the hall in search of his mother's familiar figure. "Veronica," he whispered during a brief pause between greetings. "Are you sure my mother is here?" "I've asked several guests and no one has seen her recently." "Well, to be honest," Veronica replied, realizing she couldn't stall any longer, "I think I saw her talking to the kitchen staff some time ago. Your mother always felt more comfortable with, simpler people." Raphael's eyes narrowed slightly. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Before Veronica could answer, Julia Wells approached, her smartphone always in hand. "Raphael, finally the man of the night," the influencer exclaimed. "Your followers are dying for an update. How about a quick video for my Instagram? I'm doing a special series on social contrast at the event." "Social contrast?" Raphael repeated, confused. "Oh, yes," Julia continued, too excited to perceive the danger. "I was just talking about your mother. What an authentic woman. While everyone here displays jewelry and designer brands, she's there in the kitchen, showing that she hasn't lost her humility even after your success. In fact, I already have over 50,000 views on her dishwashing video. People love these stories of overcoming adversity and—" "My mother is doing what?" Raphael interrupted, his tone suddenly grave. Julia finally realized she had said something wrong. "Oh, I thought you knew." "Your mother is helping in the kitchen. I thought it was arranged." Raphael slowly turned to Veronica, who had visibly paled. "You knew about this?" "Raphael, it's not what you're thinking," Veronica tried to explain, her voice trembling slightly. "Your mother offered to help. You know how she is, always wanting to be useful. Where is she?" Raphael asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Darling, we have hundreds of guests waiting for your speech. We can't make a scene now. We'll talk about this later, and I asked where my mother is," Raphael repeated, this time leaving no room for evasion. Patricia, who was observing the situation closely, quickly approached. "Raphael, good thing you arrived. Everyone is eagerly awaiting your words about the hospital project." "Patricia," Raphael said, completely ignoring the attempt at distraction, "where is my mother?" The organizer exchanged a nervous glance with Veronica. "Well, she was feeling a little out of place and decided to help in the kitchen. You know how simple people are, always wanting to be useful." Without another word, Raphael turned his back and walked determinedly towards the kitchen doors, ignoring his wife's calls and the flashes of photographers who, sensing that something important was happening, began to follow him. When Raphael burst into the kitchen, the frantic activity paused momentarily. All eyes turned to him, surprised by the host's presence in that work environment. "Where is my mother?" he asked, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. Chef Anthony, immediately recognizing the gravity of the situation, pointed to the dishwashing area in the back. "There, Mr. Aldridge, and I must say what they did to her is unacceptable." Raphael strode through the kitchen, followed by Leo, who had just returned with his empty tray. When he reached the dishwashing area, the scene he found made his blood boil. Yvonne stood before a sink full of water and foam, rubber gloves covering her arms up to her elbows, her navy blue dress splattered with water. Her hair, once carefully styled, was damp from the steam. But what affected Raphael most was the expression on her face, a mixture of resignation and dignity that he knew so well from his childhood when she arrived exhausted after cleaning houses all day. "Mother?" he called, his voice almost unrecognizable. Yvonne turned and, upon seeing her son, quickly tried to take off her gloves and compose herself. "Raphael, my son! Good thing you arrived. I was just helping out a little here." But Raphael wasn't listening. His eyes scanned the scene, registering every detail. The soaked gloves, the makeshift apron, the water stains on the dress he knew had been bought especially for the occasion. And then something inside him simply broke. In 3 steps, he crossed the space separating them, and without a word hugged her tightly, not caring about the water that soaked his impeccable Italian suit. "Forgive me," he whispered, his voice choked. "Forgive me for not being here." Yvonne, surprised by the intensity of her son's reaction, tried to calm him. "It's all right, my son. It's nothing much." "No, it's not all right," Raphael replied, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. "This will never happen again." At that moment, Veronica appeared at the entrance of the dishwashing area, followed by Patricia and some curious guests, including Julia, who was discreetly filming with her smartphone. "Raphael, please," Veronica pleaded, realizing the gravity of the situation. "Let's not create a scandal. The reporters are in the hall. The secretary is waiting for your speech." The look Raphael gave his wife made her involuntarily recoil. Without saying a word, he helped his mother take off her gloves and apron, and then, to the shock of all present, took off his own suit jacket and placed it over her shoulders. "Let's go back to the hall, Mother," he said with determination. "There's something I need to say to everyone present." An expectant silence fell over the main hall of Elmwood Manor when Raphael Thompson Aldridge appeared at the entrance, his arm firmly entwined with his mother's. The guests, who until then had been chatting animatedly between glasses of champagne and exclusive canapes, turned their attention to the host, instinctively sensing that something important was about to happen. Camera flashes fired incessantly, capturing the contrasting image, the successful businessman in his impeccable white shirt, without his jacket, leading a visibly embarrassed lady, whose dress showed watermarks and whose hair had lost its careful arrangement from the beginning of the night. Raphael walked with determination to the center of the hall, where a small stage had been set up for the evening speeches. Veronica, Patricia, and some important guests followed him, trying to disguise their nervousness. "Raphael," Veronica whispered, reaching him before he stepped onto the stage. "Think about what you're doing. There are reporters from every newspaper here. Any scandal will be in the headlines tomorrow." He ignored her completely, helping his mother up the stage steps. Then he took the microphone and took a deep breath, his eyes sweeping over the sea of curious faces. Some guests whispered among themselves. Others discreetly took photos with their smartphones. The tension was palpable. "Good evening, everyone," Raphael began, his voice surprisingly controlled. "First, I'd like to thank each of you for your presence on this very special night. The purpose of this event, as you know, is to raise funds for the expansion of the children's wing at St. Hope's Hospital, a project that deeply touches me." There was a brief murmur of approval. Some glasses were raised in a silent toast. "However," he continued, his tone subtly changing, "before we talk about the future of these children, I need to share with you something that happened tonight, something that made me profoundly question the values that guide our society." The hall became completely silent. Veronica, at the foot of the stage, visibly paled. "This lady beside me," Raphael continued, holding Yvonne's hand, "is my mother, Yvonne Aldridge. Many of you probably didn't recognize her when she arrived, because she doesn't wear expensive jewelry. She doesn't wear famous designer brands, and her name doesn't appear in the social columns." Yvonne tried to discreetly pull her hand away, uncomfortable with the attention, but Raphael held her firmly. "My mother grew up on the periphery of New York City, in the South Side neighborhood. At 19, she was abandoned by my father when he discovered she was pregnant. Without family support, without academic training. She did what she could to survive. She worked as a domestic worker in homes of families like ours, cleaning, cooking, taking care of other people's children, while leaving her own son with neighbors. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others lowered their eyes, embarrassed. Later, she learned to sew and started working from home, to be able to follow me more closely. She did repairs, alterations, produced school uniforms. She often worked until dawn by the light of a lamp, to ensure I had school supplies, decent clothes, food on the table, all so that I could study, so that I could have opportunities she never had. Raphael's voice faltered slightly, and he paused to compose himself. In the hall, the silence was absolute. This woman, he continued, raising his voice, is truly responsible for everything I am today. Without her sacrifice, without her unconditional love, without her unwavering faith in me, Aldridge Tech would not exist. I would not be here. This charity event would not be happening. Tears now flowed freely down Yvonne's face, who held her head high, with a dignity that impressed even the most cynical of those present. And how was this extraordinary woman received here tonight? Raphael's voice now trembled with indignation. Left alone, ignored, treated as if she were invisible, and finally, deliberately humiliated, sent to the kitchen to wash dishes, as if her place wasn't among you, as if she were less worthy of being here than anyone else in this hall. A murmur of shock ran through the audience. Some ladies brought their hands to their mouths, horrified. Others exchanged accusing glances, trying to identify the culprits. What happened tonight was not an accident or a misunderstanding, Raphael continued, his gaze now fixed on Veronica and Patricia. It was a deliberate, calculated, cruel humiliation. And the most painful thing for me is to know that this happened with the connivance and even the encouragement of people who should treat her with the utmost respect. Veronica tried to discreetly move away, but Raphael's gaze kept her pinned in place, like an insect on a pin. Tonight, I was reminded of a lesson my mother always tried to teach me. A person's true character is not revealed by what they do when everyone is watching, but by how they treat those who can offer them nothing in return, by the respect they show to those considered invisible by society. Raphael paused, looking at each face in the hall. "Look at this woman," he asked, his voice softer now. "Really look. This blue dress she's wearing was bought especially for tonight. She saved for months, refusing when I offered to buy something more expensive. I don't need luxury," she told me. "I just want to be presentable so I don't embarrass you in front of your friends." This was her fear. To embarrass me, when the truth is that I have never in my entire life felt as much pride in her as at this very moment. Yvonne sobbed softly, squeezing her son's hand. "Some of you may be wondering why I'm exposing all this publicly. Creating what my wife called a scandal," Raphael continued, his tone now ironic. "The answer is simple. Because the real scandal would be to remain silent. It would be to allow this type of behavior to continue. For people to be humiliated because of their origin, the color of their skin, the clothes they wear, or the work they do." At this moment, an elderly lady in the front row stood up with difficulty, leaning on a cane. It was Mrs. Gertrude Thompson, one of New York City's most respected matriarchs, known for her genuine philanthropic work. "Allow me to say something." "Raphael," she asked, her voice frail but clear. Raphael nodded, respectfully handing her the microphone. "I am 87 years old," Mrs. Gertrude began, addressing those present, "and in almost 9 decades of life, I have witnessed countless times the kind of cruelty that happened here tonight. New York City high society, of which I am a part, has always had this deplorable tendency to judge people by appearance, by surname, by the neighborhood they live in." She paused, her tired eyes scanning the hall. "What Raphael described is not an isolated incident. It is a reflection of an ingrained prejudice that permeates our interactions, our events, our institutions. A prejudice that many of us, being so accustomed to it, no longer even notice." Several guests lowered their eyes, ashamed. "Mrs. Yvonne," Mrs. Gertrude continued, turning to Raphael's mother, "on behalf of all decent people in this hall, I sincerely apologize for the treatment you received. The shame is not yours but ours for allowing such attitudes to persist in the 21st century." There was a moment of silence, then a spontaneous round of applause erupted in the hall. Many guests rose to their feet in a standing ovation, some with tears in their eyes. Yvonne, moved, nodded in thanks. When the applause subsided, Raphael took the microphone again. "Thank you, Mrs. Gertrude, for your sincere words. It is comforting to know that there are still people of your integrity in our social circle." He took a deep breath, then his gaze met Veronica, who remained motionless at the foot of the stage. "There's one more thing I need to say," Raphael announced, his voice now laden with resolute sadness. "Something that concerns my personal life, but which I can no longer keep to myself after what I witnessed tonight." A new silence fell over the hall. Veronica paled even further, instinctively sensing what was to come. "When I married Veronica," Raphael continued, "I believed I was uniting my life with someone who shared my fundamental values: respect, compassion, integrity. I believed we were building a partnership based on genuine love and mutual admiration." He paused, visibly emotional. "Tonight I realized I was mistaken. What I witnessed was not just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was the revelation of a character that I can no longer pretend not to see. A person who treats my mother, the human being I love and respect most in this world, with such contempt is not someone with whom I can share my life." Veronica took a step forward, in panic. "Raphael, don't do this. We can talk in private. We can resolve—" "There's nothing to resolve," he interrupted firmly. "Our union ends here, Veronica. Tomorrow my lawyers will contact you to initiate divorce proceedings." A collective shock ran through the hall. Cameras flashed frantically, capturing the historic moment. Julia Wells, the influencer, seemed about to faint with excitement at the unfolding scandal. "Now," Raphael concluded, his tone lighter, "let's return to the true purpose of this evening, helping children who need our solidarity. My mother taught me that no matter how difficult the situation, we must always fulfill our commitments. And that's what we will do." He extended his hand to Yvonne. "Mother, would you like to accompany me in the official announcement of the donation to St. Hope's Hospital?" Yvonne nodded, wiping away her tears. Raphael then addressed the guests again. "Aldridge Tech is doubling the amount raised tonight. In addition, we are creating a special program in partnership with St. Hope's Hospital. For every child treated in the oncology wing, a family from the periphery will receive full support for education and health. Because I believe, as my mother always taught me, that true social transformation only happens when we reach out to those who need it most." A new wave of applause erupted in the hall, this time even more enthusiastic. Many guests approached the stage, wanting to show support and solidarity. Veronica, abandoned and humiliated, discreetly withdrew, followed by Patricia Blackwood and a few allies. Meanwhile, Leo watched everything from the kitchen door, his eyes shining with admiration. Beside him, Chef Anthony smiled, satisfied with the turn of events. "That's a real man," the chef commented. "Someone who doesn't forget his roots and defends those he loves no matter the cost." "I've never seen anything like it," Leo replied, emotional. "It makes you believe that justice exists, even in the highest circles of society." On stage, Raphael and Yvonne received greetings from various guests who now vied for the chance to meet the extraordinary woman who had single-handedly raised one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs. The contrast with the initial treatment could not have been more striking. "Raphael," Yvonne whispered in a moment of privacy between introductions, "are you sure about the divorce? I don't want you to make a hasty decision because of me." "It's not because of you, Mother," he replied gently. "It's because of me. For who I want to be, for who you taught me to be. I could never continue married to someone capable of treating another person the way you were treated tonight. Especially you." Yvonne nodded, understanding. Her son had learned well the lessons she had tried to teach throughout her life, and that more than any material wealth or professional success was her greatest pride. Meanwhile, in the parking lot of Elmwood Manor, Veronica got into her luxury car, tears of anger and humiliation streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "He'll regret this," she murmured to Patricia, who accompanied her. "No one humiliates me like this and gets away with it." "Calm down, Veronica," Patricia advised. "This could just be the beginning. A divorce with the richest man in American technology. You can come out of this story very well if you play your cards right." Veronica wiped away her tears, her cold eyes calculating possibilities. "You're right. This isn't over yet. Not by a long shot. As Veronica's car disappeared into the New York City night inside Elmwood Manor, the celebration continued, now with a different spirit. It was no longer just a social event for the display of wealth and status, but a true celebration of human values, of respect and dignity. And at the center of it all, a simple woman from Southside, who with her silent example had provoked one of the greatest transformations ever seen in the New York City elite. The next morning, Raphael Aldridge's name was plastered across the headlines of major newspapers, news portals and television programs. What should have been just another high society charity event turned into the most talked about topic of the moment. The hashtag #RespectYvonne's had become the #1 trending topic on Twitter, and the video of Raphael's speech, recorded by several guests, went viral on all social media platforms. Tech air breaks with wife after discovering mother's humiliation, announced the New York Times in bold letters. Scandal at Elmwood Manor. The night New York City's elite was exposed, proclaimed the Wall Street Journal. Son defends mother and exposes class prejudice in high society, highlighted CNN.com. Raphael had turned off his phone and taken refuge in his mother's apartment in Southside, away from the press harassment. Sitting at the simple kitchen table, mother and son had coffee as they did every Sunday. "You shouldn't have done that, Raphael," Yvonne said, pouring more coffee into her son's cup. "Exposing our personal lives like that. I never liked to attract attention. It was necessary, mother," Raphael replied, determined, "not just for us, but for all the people who are treated with disrespect because of their origin, their appearance, their profession." "Even so," she insisted. "Announcing the divorce like that? In front of everyone." Raphael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Perhaps the method wasn't ideal, I agree. But the decision was made the moment I saw you washing those dishes. A person who allows and even encourages that kind of humiliation is not someone I can share my life with." Yvonne nodded silently, understanding her son's position, even if not entirely agreeing with how everything happened. The comfortable silence between them was interrupted by the doorbell. "Who could that be at this hour?" Yvonne asked, getting up to answer. Opening the door, she found Leo, the young waiter who had helped her the night before. He seemed nervous, holding a rolled-up newspaper in his hands. "Mrs. Aldridge, I'm sorry to show up unannounced," he said, hesitant. "I couldn't get Mr. Raphael's contact, and I thought maybe he would be here." "Come in, my boy," Yvonne invited, always hospitable. "Raphael is here. We were having coffee. Would you like a cup?" "Thank you, Mrs. Aldridge," Leo replied, timidly entering the simple but impeccably organized apartment. In the kitchen, Raphael stood up to greet the young man. "Leo, right? The waiter who helped my mother last night." "Yes, sir," Leo confirmed, shaking the extended hand. "Sorry for the intrusion, but I thought you should see this." He handed over the newspaper he was carrying. Raphael unfolded the paper and was confronted with a full-page article, signed by Julia Wells. The sensationalist title proclaimed, "Exclusive, the true story behind the Aldridge scandal." The text, filled with half-truths and malicious insinuations, suggested that Raphael had planned everything as a marketing strategy to increase Aldridge Tech's stock value, that his marriage to Veronica had always been a business arrangement, and that the mother washing dishes scene had been carefully orchestrated to create public commotion. "This is absurd," Raphael murmured, indignant. "A complete inversion of reality." "There's more," Leo said, indicating another page of the newspaper. Mrs. Veronica gave an exclusive interview. In the interview, illustrated by a photo of Veronica with a hurt expression, Raphael's ex-wife presented herself as the victim of a cruel setup. According to her, she had always treated Yvonne with the utmost respect, but the lady, out of jealousy and never having accepted her as a daughter-in-law, had deliberately created situations to harm her. Going to the kitchen, Veronica claimed, was Yvonne's own initiative, who always felt uncomfortable at social events and preferred the company of the service staff. "How dare she?" Yvonne exclaimed, reading over her son's shoulder. "I never did anything to harm her. I always tried to respect her, even when she treated me coldly." "It's her word against ours, Mother," Raphael explained, closing the newspaper with disgust. "And unfortunately, she has contacts in the press. This Julia Wells is known for creating controversies to gain followers." "There's one more thing," Leo intervened, visibly uncomfortable. Patricia Blackwood, the event organizer, is spreading rumors that Mrs. Yvonne and I have some kind of relationship. She's insinuating that I helped create the scandal out of personal interest. That's ridiculous, Raphael exclaimed. You barely knew my mother before that night. Exactly, Leo agreed. But she's trying to discredit anyone who witnessed what really happened. They've already called my university questioning my character, and the event company I work for has suspended me until everything is clarified. Yvonne brought her hands to her mouth, horrified. My God, they're destroying this boy's life because of me. Raphael stood up, determined. This won't stand. I won't let them twist the story and harm innocent people. At that moment, Raphael's phone, which he had momentarily reconnected to check important messages, rang. It was Paul, his personal assistant. Raphael, you need to see what's happening, Paul said without preamble. Veronica has called a press conference for an hour from now at the Waldorf Astoria. According to rumors, she's going to announce that she's filing a lawsuit against you for defamation and emotional distress. And there's more. Her father is threatening to withdraw financial support for Aldridge Tech's expansion into the European market. He can try, Raphael replied, with resolute calm. But I will not be blackmailed. Raphael, I know you're hurt, but we need to think strategically, Paul insisted. This public war can harm not only you, but thousands of employees who depend on the company. I understand your concern, Paul, Raphael replied after a moment's reflection. But there are principles I don't negotiate, not even for the good of the company. If Brooksbank withdraws its support, we will find other investors. What I cannot do is allow the truth to be distorted and innocent people to be harmed. After hanging up, Raphael turned to his mother and Leo, who watched him apprehensively. We need to act fast, he said. Leo, would you be willing to publicly tell what you witnessed last night? The young man hesitated for only a second before nodding. Of course, I have nothing to hide. What I witnessed was an injustice, and I would be happy to help clarify it. This could cost you your job permanently, Raphael warned. I'm practically unemployed anyway, Leo replied with a resigned smile. And my mother always taught me that we should stand on the side of truth no matter the cost. Raphael smiled, feeling an immediate affinity with the young man. A wise woman, your mother. It seems we had similar luck in that aspect. Yvonne, who had remained silent observing the dialogue, finally spoke. Raphael, are you sure you want to continue with this? Perhaps it would be better to let the matter die down naturally. I don't care what they say about me. It's not just about you, Mother, Raphael replied gently. It's about all the Yvonnes out there, every day treated with disrespect by people who consider themselves superior. It's about Leo and so many other young workers who are rendered invisible and discarded. It's about the kind of society we want to build. He picked up the phone again and dialed his legal department. Mark, Raphael here. I need you to organize a press conference for today at 4 p.m. And I want you to contact all the service staff who worked at yesterday's event. We'll need their testimonies. Meanwhile, in Veronica's luxurious apartment on the Upper East Side, the atmosphere was one of intense activity. Image consultants, lawyers, and press officers circulated through the space, preparing her for the press conference. Patricia Blackwood, now acting as her personal assistant, reviewed the prepared statements. Remember, Patricia instructed, you are the victim here. You were publicly humiliated by your husband, who orchestrated this whole situation to get out of the marriage without having to split the fortune. Do you really think they'll believe that? Veronica asked, as a makeup artist carefully applied eyeshadow to her eyelids. Most will, yes, Patricia assured. People love a story of betrayal, especially when it involves a rich and powerful man. Besides, the poor humiliated mother-in-law narrative is already getting stale on social media. Several influencers are already questioning whether it wasn't all a marketing strategy. And that waiter who helped the old woman, Veronica asked, he could be a problem. I've already taken care of it, Patricia smiled maliciously. I found out he has a partial scholarship at Hudson University. An anonymous call suggesting inappropriate behavior with clients could easily result in the loss of that scholarship. He won't risk it. What Patricia didn't know was that, at that very moment, Leo was sitting in the meeting room at Aldridge Tech headquarters, along with other employees who had worked at the event, all invited by Raphael to share their versions of the story. I want you to know that no one here is obligated to speak, Raphael clarified, looking at each of those present. I perfectly understand that many of you depend on this job and cannot take risks. I will not judge anyone who prefers to remain neutral in this situation. Sebastian, the employee from the dishwashing area who had tried to help Yvonne, was the first to speak. Mr. Raphael, I've worked in events for over 20 years. I've seen a lot of bad things happen behind the scenes. But what they did to your mother last night was one of the cruelest episodes I've ever witnessed. I'm willing to tell what I saw, even if it means never being hired for a high society event again. One by one, the other employees also volunteered to testify. Chef Anthony, whose reputation protected him from possible retaliation, was emphatic. I don't need these events to survive. My restaurants are doing very well, thank you. And I was already tired of putting up with these people's narcissism. It will be a pleasure to put some of them in their rightful place. Louisa, Leo's colleague, initially hesitant, also ended up agreeing. I have a young daughter, she explained, and I don't want her to grow up in a world where people are humiliated because of their origin or profession. If my testimony can help change this reality a little, it's worth the risk. Raphael was genuinely touched by the courage of those people who, unlike him, had a lot to lose. I promise that none of you will face financial difficulties because of this, he guaranteed. My company has openings in various sectors, and anyone who wants a new professional opportunity will be welcome. While the legal team prepared the testimonies, Raphael received an unexpected call. It was Augustus Brooks, Veronica's father. Raphael, we need to talk, the banker said without beating around the bush. This public war benefits no one. There's a family reputation at stake here. I agree it benefits no one, Augustus, Raphael replied calmly. That's why I was surprised to see your daughter giving slanderous interviews about my mother and now preparing for a press conference with more lies. Veronica is hurt, Augustus justified. You humiliated her publicly. What did you expect? I expected honesty at the very least, Raphael retorted. But it seems that's asking too much. There was a long pause before Augustus spoke again. Look, I won't defend her behavior at the event. It was inappropriate, to say the least. But turning this into a national scandal solves nothing. I wasn't the one who went to the press, Augustus, Raphael reminded him. It was your daughter. And now you're organizing a counteroffensive, the banker observed. Where will this end, Raphael? It will end when the truth is restored and when the wronged people have justice, Raphael replied firmly. I'm not at war with your family, Augustus. I'm just defending mine and other innocent people who have been dragged into this drama. Another long pause followed. I have a proposal, Augustus finally said. Cancel your press conference. In return, I will have Veronica cancel hers and withdraw any accusations against your mother or that young man. The waiter. And what will she tell the press that is already convened? She will say that after reflection, she realized that the event took on unwanted proportions and that she prefers to resolve family matters in private. Raphael pondered for a moment. It's not enough, Augustus. The damage has already been done. Leo has already lost his job. My mother has been slandered nationally. What else do you want, then? Augustus asked, impatience showing in his voice. A public and sincere retraction, Raphael replied. She doesn't have to take all the blame, but at least admit that there was inappropriate treatment and that the accusations against my mother and Leo are unfounded. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Augustus sighed deeply. I'll talk to Veronica. I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best. After hanging up, Raphael returned to the meeting room where Yvonne was now also present, chatting animatedly with the employees. There was something inspiring in the way his mother, even after all the humiliation she suffered, managed to radiate kindness and respect. Is everything all right, son? She asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Yes, mother, Raphael replied, sitting beside her, just reflecting on how such a sad situation managed to reveal so many good people. Yvonne smiled, holding her son's hand. That's how it works, Raphael. Sometimes we need to go through difficult times to find the people who truly matter. While awaiting Augustus's return, Raphael observed the interaction between his mother and the event staff. Something important was happening there, something that transcended the social scandal and touched on deeper questions about respect, dignity, and the true value of people. And he knew that, Regardless of the outcome of that specific situation, a seed of change had been planted. 3 weeks passed since the night at Elmwood Manor. The initial media frenzy had subsided, but the repercussions of the event continued to reverberate through New York City society and beyond. The case had become a national symbol for discussion about class prejudice, respect for work, and the values of American society. In the temporary apartment Raphael had rented in the Soho neighborhood, while resolving divorce issues, the entrepreneur analyzed the recent developments. Aldridge Tech's shares, after an initial drop caused by uncertainty, had recovered and even surpassed their previous value. Brooks Bank, contrary to Augustus's initial threats, maintained its financial support for the company's international projects, though with slightly less favorable terms. The situation with Veronica had stabilized. Unexpectedly, after the conversation between Raphael and Augustus, the Brooks family patriarch had convinced his daughter to adopt a more conciliatory approach. In a brief statement to the press, Veronica acknowledged that events on the night of the ball may have been misinterpreted, and that she never intended to disrespect Mrs. Yvonne Aldridge, for whom she always had great admiration. It wasn't exactly a confession of guilt, but it was enough to calm tempers and allow the divorce process to proceed less turbulently. Patricia Blackwood, on the other hand, was not so lucky. After the testimonies of event employees became public, her reputation as an event organizer suffered a devastating blow. Several important clients cancelled contracts, and she was forced to close her company. Julia Wells also faced consequences. Her credibility as an influencer plummeted when it was proven that she had manipulated information in her exclusive article. The video she made ridiculing Yvonne in the kitchen became a symbol of social bullying, being used in educational campaigns against prejudice. Raphael's phone rang, interrupting his reflections. It was Leo. Mr. Raphael. Sorry to bother you, but I wanted to personally thank you for the opportunity. Today was my first day in the Aldridge Tech internship program, and it was incredible. Raphael smiled. After all the scandal, he had offered Leo a paid internship in the company's development department, as well as a full scholarship to complete his engineering studies. I'm glad you liked it, Leo. How was the team's reception? Couldn't be better. Everyone was very welcoming. The digital inclusion project for peripheral communities is exactly the kind of work I've always dreamed of. Excellent. And how is your mother? Has she arrived from Portland, Maine? Yes, she arrived yesterday. She's delighted with the apartment you helped us rent. She said she wants to meet Mrs. Yvonne to exchange Maine recipes. Raphael laughed. I'm sure my mother will love that. She always wanted to learn how to make a good blueberry cobbler. After hanging up, Raphael checked the clock. It was almost time for the country's most watched television program, for which his mother had been invited as a special guest. He turned on the TV just in time to see the opening credits of Chat with Christine, a talk show hosted by Christine Baker, one of Brazil's most respected journalists. The camera focused on the studio, where Christine awaited her guest. Today we have the honor of welcoming a woman whose story moved the country and generated an important national debate. Please welcome with a warm round of applause Mrs. Yvonne Aldridge. The audience applauded enthusiastically as Yvonne entered the studio. Raphael proudly observed that his mother looked beautiful in an elegant but discreet turquoise ensemble, her grey hair styled in a simple yet modern updo. There was a serenity in her expression, a natural dignity that no designer clothing could confer. Mrs. Yvonne, it's a pleasure to have you, Christine began, after the initial greetings. In recent weeks, the entire country has learned your story through the incident at Elmwood Manor. But we would like to know you beyond that episode. Tell us a little about your life. With simplicity and natural eloquence, Yvonne spoke about her childhood in rural Virginia, moving to New York City at 17 in search of better opportunities, the difficulties of raising a child alone on the periphery of a metropolis, the sacrifices and joys of that journey. It was never easy, she confessed, but I never considered myself unhappy either. I had my son, my health, my honest work. Many people have less than that. And what was it like to see your son become one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs? Christine asked. Yvonne smiled, her eyes shining. A mix of pride and worry. Pride in seeing him realize his potential. Worry in knowing that the world he was entering could be unforgiving to those not born into it. And that concern came true on the night of the ball, didn't it? In a way, yes, Yvonne replied thoughtfully. But you know, Christine, what happened to me that night is nothing compared to what thousands of workers face daily. Domestic workers who are treated as invisible beings, waiters who receive scornful glances, store clerks who are humiliated by customers. The difference is that my case had repercussions because my son has power and a voice. Yvonne's sincerity visibly touched the presenter and the audience. Christine continued with questions about the specific incident, and Yvonne answered with the same honesty, without dramatization or excessive accusations. I don't hold grudges against anyone, she stated at one point. I believe that what happened served a greater purpose. It opened a necessary discussion about how we treat each other, about the value we place on work, about the prejudices we often don't even realize we have. And what about your ex-daughter-in-law, Veronica? Christine inquired. Can you forgive her? Yvonne paused, carefully choosing her words. To forgive does not mean to approve of what was done, but to free oneself from the burden of resentment. So yes, I forgive her, and I sincerely hope she finds peace and maturity through this experience. The interview continued, addressing themes such as motherhood, work dignity, and the values Yvonne had tried to instill in her son. At the end, Christine asked a question that touched the heart of the matter. Mrs. Yvonne, after all you've lived through, what message would you like to leave for our viewers? Yvonne looked directly at the camera, as if she could see every person watching her. I would like to say that honest work, whatever it may be, deserves respect, that no one should feel diminished by what they do to survive, as long as they do it with dignity, and that no one is better than anyone else because of the money they have, the clothes they wear, or the neighborhood they live in. A person's true value lies in character, kindness, and the respect they show for others. She paused briefly, then continued. And for those who have suffered some form of humiliation or prejudice, I want to say do not let it destroy your self-esteem. Keep your head held high and continue your path with dignity. As my mother used to say, true class is something else. The audience erupted in enthusiastic applause, many with tears in their eyes. Raphael, watching from home, also felt a deep emotion, seeing his mother transform a painful experience into a message of hope and dignity for millions of Americans. Meanwhile, in an elegant cafe at the Westfield World Trade Center, Veronica watched the interview on her smartphone, an indecipherable expression on her face. Beside her, her friend Caroline commented animatedly, "You have to admit, Veronica, that woman has a natural class that many people in our social circle don't even dream of having." Veronica didn't respond immediately. Finally, she sighed. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps I've made some misjudgments. That's almost an apology coming from you, Caroline observed, surprised. Don't exaggerate, Veronica replied with a tense smile. Let's just say I'm reevaluating some things. The week after the show, Yvonne received a surprising invitation. Mrs. Gertrude Thompson, the matriarch who had defended her at the ball, was organizing a charity event at her mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, and wanted Yvonne to be the guest of honor. I don't know if it's a good idea, Mother, Raphael commented when she showed him the invitation. I don't want you to expose yourself to that environment again. I understand your concern, son, Yvonne replied serenely, but I think I should go. Not for me, but for what it represents. To refuse would be like admitting that I don't belong in those places. And the truth is that we all belong everywhere, as long as there is mutual respect. Raphael nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his mother's words. In that case, I'll go with you. And this time I won't leave your side for a minute. The event at the Thompson mansion was very different from the ball at Elmwood Manor. Although luxury and elegance were present, there was a more welcoming and less ostentatious atmosphere. Upon arriving, Yvonne and Raphael were received with genuine cordiality by Mrs. Gertrude. Mrs. Yvonne, what an honor to have you with us tonight, the hostess greeted, taking Yvonne's hands in hers. Your television interview was inspiring. I believe we all have much to learn from your wisdom. The event aimed to raise funds for a professional training program for women from disadvantaged communities, offering technical courses, support for small businesses and scholarships. And to Yvonne's surprise, Mrs. Gertrude invited her to be part of the initiative's board of directors. "We need people who truly understand the needs of these women," the matriarch explained. "Someone who has been in their shoes and managed to raise a child with dignity, despite all the difficulties. Your experience would be invaluable to us." Moved, Yvonne accepted the invitation. For the first time, she felt that her story and experience were truly valued in that environment. The evening progressed pleasantly, with Yvonne being treated with genuine respect by everyone present. At one point, she noticed a familiar figure timidly approaching. It was Leo, impeccably dressed in a well-tailored suit. "Mrs. Yvonne, so good to see you again," he greeted with a radiant smile. "Leo, what a wonderful surprise," she replied, genuinely happy. "You look so elegant." "Your son's gift," he confessed, adjusting his tie. "I was invited to represent Aldridge Tech's digital inclusion project. I can hardly believe I'm here as a guest, not a waiter." "You deserve it, my boy. You're a talented and kind-hearted young man." As they talked, Raphael watched the scene with satisfaction. His assistant, Paul, approached with important news. "I just received confirmation," Paul informed discreetly. "The deal with the Middle Eastern investors has closed. Aldridge Tech's international expansion is secured, even without Brooksbank's full support." "Excellent," Raphael replied, not taking his eyes off his mother and Leo. "But honestly, Paul, that seems less important now." "What do you mean?" the assistant asked, surprised. "It's the biggest deal in the company's history." Raphael smiled thoughtfully. "Yes, but I'm starting to realize that there are things more valuable than corporate expansions and billion-dollar mergers." "Are you talking about this social work your mother is going to start with Mrs. Gertrude?" "Not just that. I'm talking about the real impact we can have on people's lives. Look at Leo, for example. In 3 weeks, he went from an unemployed waiter to one of the most promising talents on our development team. And it's not charity. The young man has incredible potential that he simply didn't have the opportunity to develop." "Are you thinking of changing the company's focus?" Paul inquired, intrigued. "Not exactly, but I'm considering creating a specific division for social impact projects, accessible technology for underserved communities, professional training programs, incubators for social startups. Imagine how many Leos are out there just waiting for an opportunity." As they talked, an unexpected figure entered the hall, causing a discreet stir among the guests. It was Veronica, elegant as always, but with a less arrogant demeanor than usual. After briefly greeting some acquaintances, she went directly to where Yvonne was talking with Leo. Raphael tensed immediately, ready to intervene at the first sign of disrespect. But to his surprise, Veronica approached with a genuinely contrite expression. "Mrs. Yvonne," she began, visibly nervous, "I know my presence may be uncomfortable, and I will perfectly understand if you prefer me to leave. But first I would like to say something I should have said a long time ago." Yvonne, always dignified, nodded silently, allowing her to continue. "I want to apologize," Veronica continued, her voice trembling slightly, "not just for what happened that night, but for all the times I treated you with less respect than you deserved. It was unfair, it was cruel, and I have no excuses for it." A tense silence followed. Everyone around seemed to hold their breath, awaiting Yvonne's reaction. Finally, the lady responded with her characteristic serenity. "Thank you for your words, Veronica. Life is too short to carry resentments. I accept your apologies and sincerely hope you find peace and happiness on your path." Veronica, visibly moved by the generous response, simply nodded and discreetly walked away. Raphael, who had observed the entire scene, approached his mother with renewed admiration. "How can you be so magnanimous, mother?" "After all she did," Yvonne smiled gently. "It's not magnanimity, son. It's wisdom. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick." The party continued, and to everyone's surprise, Veronica remained, behaving with discretion and respect. At one point, she approached Raphael, who was talking to some businessmen. "Can we talk for a minute?" she asked, hesitant. Raphael excused himself from the businessmen and followed Veronica to a quieter corner of the hall. "Thank you for not kicking me out of the event," she began. "I know you would have every right to do so." "I don't own the place," he replied dryly. "And Mrs. Gertrude seems to believe in second chances." "As does your mother," Veronica observed. "She has an admirable greatness of spirit, I guess I never really knew her, never gave myself that opportunity. Raphael studied his ex-wife's face, trying to detect any sign of falsehood. But to his surprise, he saw only sincerity. Why did you come, Veronica? The apology could have been made in private, without exposing yourself like this. Because it needed to be public, she replied simply. The disrespect was public, the humiliation was public. The apologies should be too. Raphael nodded, recognizing the logic in her words. And what about the divorce? Your lawyers continue to demand impossible conditions. Not anymore, Veronica said. I've instructed them to accept your last proposal. It's more than fair. I don't want to prolong this more than necessary. What changed? Raphael asked, genuinely curious. Veronica reflected for a moment before answering. I changed, I guess. Or maybe I'm starting to change. Seeing your mother on television, the way she spoke about forgiveness and dignity, it made me think a lot about the kind of person I've been. Do people really change, Veronica? I don't know, she answered honestly, but I'm willing to try. Before Raphael could reply, Mrs. Gertrude stepped onto the small stage set up in the hall, asking for everyone's attention for an important announcement. Dear friends, tonight is special not only for the amount raised for our cause, but for the spirit that permeates it. I would like to invite to the stage the inspiration for this project, our guest of honor, Mrs. Yvonne Aldridge. Amidst warm applause, Yvonne stepped onto the stage, visibly moved. Beside her, Mrs. Gertrude continued. When I met Yvonne that night at Elmwood Manor, I saw in her something that our society often forgets. True dignity does not come from titles, possessions, or appearances, but from the character and kindness we show to others. There were murmurs of agreement among the guests. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that our foundation, in partnership with Aldridge Tech, is creating the Yvonne Aldridge Institute for Professional Training, a space where women from underserved communities can learn professions, develop skills, and receive the necessary support to achieve economic independence and dignity. The audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. Raphael, who was not aware of this specific part of the project, looked at his mother with overflowing emotion. Yvonne seemed in shock, her hands covering her face in an expression of surprise and gratitude. And to lead this institute, Mrs. Gertrude continued, no one better than Yvonne herself, whose life story and wisdom will be an inspiration to thousands of American women. When the applause subsided, Yvonne, still visibly emotional, approached the microphone. I have no words to express what I feel at this moment, she began, her voice choked. Throughout my life, I worked to ensure my son had opportunities I never had. Today I see that all the sacrifices were worth it, not just for his success, but for the person he became. She paused to discreetly wipe away a tear, then continued. This institute will not be just mine. It will belong to every woman who has ever felt that her opportunities were limited by her origin, color, or social condition. To every single mother who struggles daily to raise her children with dignity. To every worker who deserves respect, regardless of her profession. The emotion in the hall was palpable. Many guests discreetly wiped away tears, touched by the sincerity and strength of that simple woman from Southside. The message I want to leave tonight is simple. It doesn't matter where we come from, but where we are going and how we treat others on that journey. True nobility is not in blood or surname, but in daily acts of respect and kindness. With these final words, Yvonne received a standing ovation. Raphael, observing the impact his mother had on people who, weeks earlier, might not even have noticed her, felt a mixture of pride and gratitude. That extraordinary woman, who had faced so many difficulties without ever losing her dignity, was finally receiving the recognition she had always deserved. The following week, the Yvonne Aldridge Institute was officially inaugurated in a spacious and modern facility in the Long Island City neighborhood in the eastern part of New York City. For the ceremony, not only important personalities were invited, but mainly women from the communities that would benefit from the project. Raphael, alongside his mother, watched with satisfaction the diverse crowd that filled the auditorium. Journalists recorded every moment, while Leo, now officially promoted to Aldridge Tech's Social Projects Coordinator, confidently and competently guided the guests. We did it. Mother, Raphael said softly, holding Yvonne's hand. We transformed a painful experience into something that will help thousands of people. "No, son," she corrected with a serene smile. "You did it." "I was just myself, as I always have been. And that's why I admire you so much," he replied, affectionately kissing her forehead. "Because you never needed applause or recognition to be the extraordinary person you are." As they walked together to the center of the stage, where they would cut the inaugural ribbon, Yvonne reflected on the incredible journey life had provided her. From a poor girl in rural Virginia to a single mother on the periphery of New York City, from a tireless seamstress to the inspiration for a social transformation project, every step, every challenge had contributed to this moment. And perhaps, she thought, true greatness was not in shining alone, but in lifting others alongside you, as she had always tried to do with her son, and as she would now do with so many other women who, like her, deserved a chance to show their worth. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Mrs. Yvonne and Raphael Aldridge has deeply touched your hearts. To follow more emotional stories like this, which reveal the true dignity behind appearances, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications. Leave your like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences and reflections on respect and valuing people enrich our community. We have prepared a special playlist with other narratives of overcoming adversity and recognition that you can access by clicking on the link to the left. We'll be back tomorrow with another story that will move and inspire you. Until then.